Good morning, church. Are we happy to be in the presence of the living God? Amen. Sorry for the late start. Let's begin with a word of prayer, please. Father, you are holy, you are faithful, you are merciful, you are a good God. Thank you, faithful Father, for bringing us into your presence. Thank you, Lord, for this day. Thank you, Father, for a new season. Thank you, O God, Father, for bringing us into this season of thanksgiving. We give thanks to you. Have your way in our lives. Speak to us, O God, this morning. For your word says, faith comes by the hearing of the word. Not just any word out there, but, Father, the word of the living God. Father, we come to hear your word. Open our hearts that we can receive that word and that we can be transformed by those words. In Jesus' mighty name we've prayed. Amen. Just a quick verse that I just want to share with you and then before I proceed. Isaiah 43:18. Isaiah 43:18. It says, do not remember the former things, nor consider the things of old. Isaiah 43:18. Do not remember the former things, nor consider the things of old. A lot of us get caught up with the things of yesterdays, but God is concerned with now and preparing for tomorrow. A lot of us get caught up with the things of yesterday and forget to enjoy the now that God is so concerned with. Yes, I come from a poor background. Yes, I come from a single family home. Yes, I come from a family where no one has been rich. No one has known God. I come from a family X, Y, Z, all of that. Remember them not, for God is concerned with your now. Yes, I was abused yesterday. Yes, I was thrown out. Yes, I was homeless yesterday. All of that. There's a distinction between remembering and forgetting. I'm not saying don't forget them. Don't remember them. Because the minute you give value to those things, they hold you back. I'm here to encourage someone not to remember those things and be focused on the now. Amen? The last time we were here, we started the book of 1 Kings. And before we do that, I just want to share with the church here. I know my wife is out there. Friday made us 5 years of marriage. So I don't know, she's been very, very, I don't know what she's gone through, but you know what, to keep up with the crap that this guy offers, I give her credit, and that marriage has been blessed with 2 lovely, beautiful children. So I thank God for that. We thank God for his grace. I didn't ever see myself sharing a room or sharing space with anybody, but here I am 5 years. So it's only the grace of God. The last time I was here, we talked briefly. We started the book of Kings. And let me ask you a question. Kings, there's 1 Kings and 2 Kings. Were these single books, or at some point they were separated? Just in case. The book of Kings. From the onset, was it a one book or was it a separate book? Just one book, okay. Can somebody tell me briefly the purpose of Kings? The book of Kings. What is the purpose? Just briefly, please. Yes. Characteristics. I know we talked about characteristics, but it was not specifically in reference to the purpose of Kings. And the reason when I talked about the characteristics, I was sharing a story with Acts, I think it's Acts 28, where Paul, remember when Paul was on his way to Rome, first the angel appeared to Paul and said, everyone that is with you will not die. So God only spoke to his own servant. So here to encourage you, wherever you are, remember that God is willing and ready to speak to you. But at some point when they went through all that turmoil and they found themselves at this island, Malta, and the citizens, these are not non-Christians, these are not believers. These people went out of their way to pick up sticks, pick up firewood, to set up a fire for them. And as generous these people are, not people of God, as generous as they were, Paul took it upon himself. The fire was already lit. The place was getting warm. But Paul decided to still go get his fire, and that's what Brother Ayo is talking about. There are certain things you need to be prayerful. Don't wait on the man of God to pray for you. Don't wait on the man of God to read the Bible for you. Don't wait on the man of God to, you need to take initiatives. There are certain things that you have to take, and that's what Brother gather your sticks, that's what he's talking about. But again, let's back to the question. The purpose of the book of Kings.
When you forget about God, the whole purpose to me is when you forget God. What happens when you forget God?
True. That's God's people. See, the purpose. It's about there are two things here. First, it talks about a divided kingdom. When he wrote this, he's talking about a divided kingdom. And secondly, what happens? The situation that God's children should depend on God, on His faithfulness. So, from our brother's standpoint of view, what happens when we fail to depend on God? So that's we talked about some key verses. We went through the key verses, and I gave you guys a brief story, brief history about the book. And the reason I'm starting to get to this thing, I want us to get this is supposed to be an interactive class. That way I can gauge whether people follow and getting the better understanding. I'm trying to get to that point because we don't have a way. I know we're limited to just about 30 minutes, but it's not just about the 30 minutes, it's about us understanding. So if I have to take a step back and start throwing out questions here, please, the goal is just for me to make sure that we've gotten some kind of an understanding with those classes. So the last time we talked briefly about the summary of the book, and we talked about in the midst of the tragic, the book first of all begins with King David and what Bathsheba's story. Remember that brought forth Solomon. So with the book of Kings, that we now have King Solomon rolling. The first few chapters, it's a united kingdom. But when you get to about the 11th or so chapter, the kingdom divides. What led to that division? See, God wants you and I to stay together. The minute we start drifting away from the things of God, things starts to fall apart. So there's this division, and in the midst of the chaos, in the midst of all that disaster that takes place, the failure to honor God, to worship God, somebody pops up in the scene. When you open to chapter 17, you have Elijah from nowhere. He just pops up to the screen. See, God will always have his servants out there. And so I charge you that you could be that servant, not just for your household, not just for this for your family, but also maybe for this generation. Because in the midst of all of the chaos, in the midst of them started to walk away from the things of God, Elijah must be somewhere, must be preparing, must have been studying, must have been faithfully seeking God. And so that's why he pops up to the screen from verse 17. And at some point, I think one of the key verses that we read last time, he said to the king, say, until I speak a word, then it will rain. He didn't say until God speaks a word. So there must have been some strength or some power that he must have spent a lot of presence to the point that his words are so powerful. And so I challenge you as children of God, as you seek God, be mindful of your words. When you build a relationship with God, God can define your words at many times. He will define your words. So today, except anybody has a question, today we'll start with the basic outlines of the chapter, the book. Any quick question before we proceed? I had some notes here. But, Pastor Peter, some notes, please. There's some notes. To those of you who are joining, there are some notes back there. Please make sure you bring back these notes. Okay, please make sure you bring up back these notes. And we're on the second page. We're talking today about the outline. The outline, when you look at the First Kings, is divided into two sections. The first section is section chapters 1 through 11 that talks about the United Kingdom. And then verses 12 through 22 talks about the divided kingdom. So let's talk briefly about the United Kingdom. The section covers the last united monarch of Israel, Solomon. Solomon, remember, took over David. And we all agree here that Solomon is the product of that awful relationship between David and Bathsheba. I am not here to encourage you to go into unlawful relationships thinking that God will bless you with Solomon. But I'm also here to say that regardless of what you've done in the past, God is still willing and ready to use that past for a better tomorrow. And that's what we started yesterday. Remember not the past. Yes, David was in this awful relationship and he produced Solomon. Solomon will go on to be one of the great kings. Is it that God glorifies our sinful past? Is it that God glorifies the painful things so I can run into doing sinful things and say God will bless you? No, far from the truth. The point is just here that when you make those errors, as you make those mistakes, and we will, there are many that will, but when you make those mistakes, please do not stay in that spot. And I did say here that if you're a Bible student, you will remember that when David committed that sin with Bathsheba, it is believed that David wrote Psalms 51 as a result. He poured out his heart to God. And that's why when I hear some people say, but how can David be a man of after God's heart when he's committed all these sins and he was so murderous? But David knew how to touch God. He knew. And by the way, before David got that term, a man after God's heart, let me tell you this. Remember that some of the Psalms, David wrote them while in the bush, taking care of the sheep. So David's relationship goes far back to his teenage days, to his growing up. He's going about his normal business, taking care of sheep, but in the process of doing that, he seeks a higher being. See, regardless of the things you've been through or some of the foundations that you lay out, and I've said this before, your tomorrow is dependent on the decisions and the actions you make today. The choices you make today will reflect what will become of you tomorrow. Your today is based on the actions and the decisions and the choices you made yesterday. David was out there happily taking care of sheep and writing his songs. He was a songwriter. And I said here too, please, and I hope I'm not deviating from the studies. I said here, when you read Matthew 25:15, said to one he gave them 5 talents, to another he gave 4, to another he gave 1. Or no, 5, 2, and 1. What I mean by that is that all of them had talent. So all of us sitting here today, there is none of us that was created without a talent. And so what do you do with those talents? David had his talents, and while he's out there taking care of the animals, David made sure that he was writing songs. Not just any songs for you and I to go and dance in the club, but songs glorifying a higher being. He knew that his existence depended on God. That is before David was even called. Some of those songs were written. So he wrote down these songs. He spent time. Let me ask you, those of you who have jobs and you go about your daily activities, do you spend time? Do you take a minute or two? I know how busy America is. I know how busy our lives is. Do you find time in that chaotic day, in that busy day, to just spend time in the presence of the living God? And I'm here to challenge you, to submit to you that whatever you've been doing in that quiet moment, those things will come to pass. There will come a moment that you will look back, you will need those things. I am telling you some of the things that I stand here to teach you. These are things that I did some few years ago. I started studying these things back some few years, not for the sake of coming here to teach. No, I was doing these things to teach. The intent that I was doing this thing was to get a better understanding of the God that I serve. And here I am using them. See, whatever you've done for the kingdom, it will not go to waste. You're building up a tomorrow. That's when God seeks and says, yeah, this is the person that seeks my heart. So when I hear people say, I want to be like David, a man after God's heart, let's look at what David did in his quiet time. Can you genuinely go out and seek God? Not because your pastor said so, not because your parents said so, not because your husband said so, not because your children said so. No, in your quiet moment. So Solomon's reign, back to the note, Solomon's reign is the apex of Israel's life in Old Testament Israel. That was the apex. Because after Solomon, things started going down. Let's talk about Solomon's rise to power. See, David made one of the biggest mistakes. David told Bathsheba that Bathsheba, he made a promise to Bathsheba, and bro, I don't know, let me read my notes for the sake of time, if I can get some Bible verses here. David told Bathsheba that Solomon was going to be king. Privately, publicly, he did not discuss that. You realize that by so doing, that created a problem. I am here to charge you as servant of God. Please, let your private life not be so separated from your public life. I've said here before that some of us can stand here and talk so powerfully about the things of God, but if you really want to know that I'm a true Christian, look for me in my private, quiet moment. I've also charged you here that if you want to really, truly know, somebody was telling me last time, oh, Roy, so patient, so humble. I said, please go and ask my wife that. Go ask me, talk to my wife, talk to my children. See, if you really want to know my true call or my true identity, talk to my wife, talk to my children. Because you know what, if you left to me, I would tell you all and somebody was so shocked to hear that I said one of the biggest problems I deal with is anger. Say, you? I say, yes, I'm just telling you. I feel comfortable to release it here, to talk here. And the only way I can confront that, to overcome that anger, is to confront it. I will not shy away from it. This is my life. I'm not adoring it. I'm not glorifying it. But I'm saying that this is something I deal with. I know that this thing runs in my family. And because it runs in my family, I have to spend time on my knees to confront it. So David tells Bathsheba that Solomon would take over. But he doesn't make that public declaration. So you remember that at some point his son Adonijah takes upon himself to become king. If Ayo, do you have First Kings? If you know what, let me see if I can pick up that First Kings myself. Can anybody get First Kings? First Kings. Let me get to it and okay, First Kings 6. I just want to read some few verses in First Kings. First Kings 17. First Kings 17. First Kings 1:17. It says, "Then she said to him," that is Bathsheba speaking to David, "My Lord, you swore by the Lord your God to your maid servant, saying, assuredly Solomon your son shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne." That's First Kings 1:17. This is David, Bathsheba confronting David. But he made that statement. He did not make a public statement for that. I am charging you as believers, let's not have a separate life between a public life and a private life. So Adonijah takes upon himself to become king. Let's go back to verse 1 Kings 5 and 7. First Kings 1, 5 and 7. Let me read. "Then Adonijah, the son of Haggai, exalted himself, saying, I will be king. And he prepared for himself chariots and horsemen and 50 men to run before him. And his father had not rebuked him at any time by saying, why have you done so? He was also very good looking. His mother had borne him after Absalom. Then he conferred with Joab, the son of Zoriah, and with Abithar, the priest, and they followed and helped Adonijah. See, had David gone publicly, maybe this mishap could have not been created. He didn't talk about it publicly, So Adonijah takes upon himself, and I'm here to charge you. See, it is God who exalts people. It's God who chooses. Adonijah took upon himself, he said, our war. He took it upon himself. God has not entrusted you and I with those powers. It is him to designate who he chooses, who he wants to use. And I'm also here to caution you, when you see the people that have been selected and been chosen by God, please do not offend. Yes, they have their weaknesses. Yes, they have some errors. But God has chosen them and he knows why. He best understands. So when when you exalt yourself, remember when he said to Joshua, he said, this day I will exalt you before the people. It is him that exalts, not you, not us. When you decide to take upon yourself to do to do the thing that is left of God, you are only inviting pain and suffering. Because if you read, it didn't take long for Adonijah to find himself hanging onto the altar. Amen? So it is God that chooses and exalts people, not you. Failure is doomed to come your way when you get to do things our way. So David's loyalists, like the Zadok, the priest, Nathan, the prophet, they came and warned David. I said, David, you've not publicly spoken, you've said about this. If you read 1 Kings 32, 30, and I say you pay attention to 39 and verse 38, there David did not pray about Solomon, making sure that Solomon, and I make reference to that in the beginning, anything that you do that is not of God or with God is doomed to fail. Whatever activity you want to get into, make sure, one of the things, and I've said this before, the very first words in the Bible, Genesis 1, is 1:1, say, in the beginning, God. I challenge you and I charge you, brothers and sisters, whatever it is that you want to get into, or you want to do, whatever decision you want to make sure that God is in the beginning. Not in the middle, not at the end. But a lot of us have the tendency to bring in God when things fall apart. He says, I'm the author and the finisher. Not just the finisher. If you want faith, I'm the author and the finisher of it. Let's look at quickly look at some quick decision that Solomon made. Wise decision. Number one, the first decision that Solomon made was with Adonijah. After Adonijah realizes Nathan, they go to David, they get Solomon out. Solomon is proclaimed publicly as a king. Adonijah finds out, so what is it? The people that were with Adonijah, they abandoned Adonijah and asked himself, what has happened? And he's told that a new king, the real king has been ordained, has been made public. And so he, in those days, cultural-wise, he went and hung onto the altar. And so Solomon, this information is brought to Solomon that Adonijah is hanging onto the altar. And Solomon makes one of the first decisions, wise decisions. Say, I will not kill him. Bring him. If he's faithful, if he's honest, I'll spare his life. And they went and brought Adonijah before David. And he came and acknowledged David as being the king. David spared his life. Second decision, few chapters down, just the next chapter. Human beings are always human beings. Be very cautious as you deal with human beings. Few chapters into chapter 2, the same Adonijah comes now to Bathsheba. And this is a plot that he's setting up. Comes to Bathsheba, says, Bathsheba, I have one request. And Bathsheba says, say it. He said, can you tell your son to give me, I think the Shunammite as a wife? You read that and you think that it's all about asking a wife. Why just a wife? I mean, why is this thing? Why is this thing complicated? And yes, Bathsheba went innocently to the son and said, son, can you give Adonijah this woman? Hear the response from Solomon. Why don't you allow him to ask for the kingdom too? There was a much bigger issue then. And as a result, this time around, Solomon will not spare Adonijah's life. Because Adonijah, in acting and asking for that wife, was setting up himself. It was a plot. Be mindful with the people. Be mindful what people say to you. When people talk with you and discuss with you, take a step back and reflect on it, meditate on it, and seek the will of God. Is it in the will of God? Because people have the tendency to tell you what they want to tell you, what pleases them, what makes them look good. Things are not always what it is when you look at it from the surface value. Try to go deeper. But go so meditated prayerfully. The third decision that he makes is he takes up the decision to deal with, when his father died, there were some instructions to penalize certain people, bring judgment to certain people, which he takes care of that. Again, you could read those things for us not to spend that much time on it. You could read them. But the biggest, wisest decision that Solomon made, it is believed that Solomon made this decision in his purest of his moments, still innocent. Remember when Solomon had given he had given about 1,000 sacrifice, and I've sat down. I'm like 1,000. Could you imagine Solomon is doing sacrifice 1,000 of them? You bring 1,000 sheep. You stand. Just think for a minute. Just try to graphically picture this situation. 1 goat, 2, 3, 4, 5. It gets to 10. You think it's enough. Solomon says it's not enough. 6. 100, not enough. 100 and something, not enough. 200, not enough. 1,000. Let me ask, what sacrifices do you bring to God? Remember at some point David said, I will not sacrifice anything to God that will not cost me. This is Solomon here giving a sacrifice to God. 1,000. And it is said that that night God appeared to him. Do you know there are some sacrifices that can make God appear to you? So God appeared to him that night and said, tell me what you want. You will think, and I'm telling you, if God appears to me tonight and says, Ruwa, what do you want? Believe me or not, listen, you don't want to hear some of my requests. I know I'll not ask for a second wife, that I know for sure, but you don't want to know some of my requests that I'll put out there. But Solomon said, but you've blessed me with all these people. You've made me king. All I'm asking for is wisdom. How could he think of that wisdom? A lot of us would think of material things. Give me money, give me position, give me power, give me this. He said, no, give me wisdom so that I can rule these people, so I can guide these people, that if you're interested. He made sure to remind God that you gave me these people to rule. You made me king, not me. It's not me. And you know I'm still a child. Wisest decision, and God gave him wisdom. See, the Bible is clear. If any of you lacks wisdom, ask, and he who is generous will give. See, when you have wisdom, it's very powerful. When you have wisdom, you can move mountains. And the other decision that he made was this decision where he had the two women. Two women, they were sleeping, and then in the middle of the night, one of the child died. Let me tell you, when you're sleeping, the enemy is at work. Be very mindful as you go to bed. While you're happily sleeping, the enemy is there killing your dreams. The enemy is there killing your future. I'm not saying that don't sleep. Please, I'm not saying that. But I just want us to be very mindful. We have to be alert as we go to bed, prayerfully go to bed, and prayerfully walk out of bed. Because the enemy has gone around planted. You never know. That child that represents our future, that child that represents your tomorrow, that child that represents everything, the enemy is there killing. And the enemy is there exchanging things. Your future with the dead or your past. So they brought these children to Solomon, and Solomon, the living child, where the two women were fighting, and Solomon at some point said, okay, to be fair, since none of you can rightfully tell me who owns this child, I will chop this child into pieces. And in so doing, the real mother of that child said, instead of seeing this, I would rather have that child. Let her have that child. It was a wise way of setting her. See, at times, please, when you talk to these men of God, don't just look at them and take them. Listen to them. Be very attentive. Try to decipher their decisions and their thinking. And that's why I share some of these things, because when prophets stand there, a prophet but says something, you are trying, it will not make sense. Some of their decisions will not make sense. But these are people that have a higher understanding with the things of God, or at least a level of communication. Solomon's great achievement, chapter 6 through 10. Remember, David had desired to build the temple, but God said, your hand is full of bloodshed. Solomon will be the one to build that temple. You will think that David will go into some kind of a crisis mood. But you know what? David instead said, Lord, now you've said I will not build it. It was in my decision to build. But because you've said I will not build, I will take part in building. And so he prepared and laid up the necessary resources for the son. I ask you, what is it that you wanted to do and God is saying that you shouldn't do? How do you respond to it? How do you take that message? I also ask you today, how are you preparing your children for tomorrow? How? David knew the great task that lies ahead for his son. He started laying up all the necessary resources. Let me say this, and I think I've said this in the past. For every president that is out there, for any murderer that is out there, for any terrorist that is out there, for any CEO that is out there, they come from a home. So, Solomon is given the honor to erect the temple. 1 Kings 6:1, you can read that, you can get that there. Again, I try to bring biblical context. That way we're not teaching me or teaching things that are out of God. We want to state this is a Bible teaching class. So you can read those Bible verses. I put them there so that, please, in your quiet moment as you go through those things, and if you see something that is said in error or written in error, please bring them back. I'm also a student like you. Okay, I've been privileged that because of you, I am encouraged to do this, but please, I am not perfect. So those Bible verses are there for you to read. It took David 7 years to build a temple. But it took Solomon 7 years to build the temple. It took him 13 years to build his palace. Now, there are a lot of talks around that. Why will he spend only 7 years to build the things of God? I could stand here and say that partly planning went into it. Remember that David stored up a lot of some of the resources. It could be. Now, I have not detailedly read the Bible to see if that is a problem by him devoting only 7 years. But all I will tell you is that after 7 years, I am told the furnishings, the planning, the everything, that it was beautiful, it was magnificent. Are you contributing to building the house of the Lord? And how are you doing that contribution? The temple is dedicated. And for those of you who, again, Bible students, after the dedication of the temple, Solomon, why do I keep coming back to Solomon? Solomon dedicates the temple. And after a great feast for dedicating that temple, God reappears to Solomon the second time. Let me ask, the things you've been blessed with, how often do you dedicate them to God? Do you recognize that those things are a gift from God? Or are you like Adonijah, who will say, I will do this, I. Solomon dedicates that to God, and God appears to him the second time. Some of you may be wondering why God has not appeared to you. Maybe you've not dedicated your life fully to God. Maybe you've not dedicated certain things to God. Could you just take a step back and dedicate some of these things? Let's talk about some of the great failures, chapter 11. Solomon, with all the wisdom, brought about his own downfall. Could you believe that? I was just side comment. I was at the doctor's office this Tuesday. I wasn't supposed to go there, and I meet this lady, and she starts telling me, "Oh, in the Bible, God allows people to marry multiple wives." I'm like, "Really?" I said, "But people marry them. Does that mean that God said it's okay to marry multiple wives?" She said, "I said, well, let me ask, are you married?" She said, "Yes." "So are you telling me that now that you're married and you're a Christian, are you telling me that you will allow your husband to marry multiple wives?" She said, "No, no, no." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I don't like to." I said, "Do you know that some of the things you don't like are not the things of God?" Just because Solomon married multiple wives does not mean that God has sanctioned it. God allowed it. He didn't interfere with it. And I've said it in the past. Our mind is so powerful that it will override the will of God and the mind of God. Be careful with what you do with your mind, and be careful with what you do. If I stand here today and say, "I don't want to go to church," God tells me to go to church, I can override that God's decision by not coming to church. You have a very powerful instrument in your mind. And whoever controls your mind controls your destiny and controls your tomorrow. The question is, will you allow the enemy to control it, or will you allow God to control it? Solomon started as a wise man, and at some point he allowed the enemy to control it. Next time we'll meet again by the grace of God. We'll start talking about his failures. Father, we thank you, we bless you, we just adore you. We commit the rest of today's activities into your mighty hands. Have your way, oh God. Change somebody's life today. Change somebody's story. Thank you, faithful Father. For this in Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.